There's something quietly fascinating about the way a joke can land in All in the Family, not as a punchline that releases tension, but almost as a way to dodge it, like a quick turn of the head when a conversation starts getting too close to something real. And when you sit with the show long enough, especially in an episode where Archie finds himself cornered not by a person, but by an idea he can't quite control, you start to notice that his humor isn't really there to entertain. It's there to protect him. And the episode I keep coming back to when I think about this is one where the entire situation unfolds from something that feels small at first, almost harmless. A casual conversation about a new neighbor who has moved into the area, someone who doesn't quite fit into Archie's expectation of what the neighborhood should look like, someone who represents a shift, not just in demographics, but in attitude, in openness, in the way people define normal. It starts simply enough, with Gloria mentioning it in passing, not even as a debate, just as an observation, and Mike picks it up, as he often does, turning it into something a little broader, something that touches on acceptance and change. And right away, before the conversation even has time to fully take shape, Archie reacts, but not with anger, not yet, instead with humor. It's the kind of humor that gets a laugh, the kind that feels familiar, built on exaggeration and quick judgment, something that seems harmless if you don't look too closely. And that's the first layer of what makes this episode so interesting, because the audience laughs, the room reacts, and for a moment it feels like the tension has been diffused. But it hasn't. It's just been covered. And the living room, that constant, almost stage-like space where everything unfolds, becomes the perfect place for that kind of covering to happen. Because there's nowhere to go, no escape from the conversation, no distraction, just the same chairs, the same walls, the same people, circling around the same ideas. Mike doesn't let the humor end the conversation, and that's important because if he did, the episode would stop there. It would become just another moment of light comedy. But instead, he gently pushes back, not aggressively, not in a way that tries to overpower Archie, but in a way that keeps the topic alive. And that's when the humor starts to shift. Archie makes another joke, then another, each one slightly sharper, slightly more pointed, and you begin to feel the pattern, the way he uses humor not just to respond, but to avoid, to redirect, to keep the conversation from settling into something that requires him to actually engage. Gloria notices it too in her own way, not analyzing it, not breaking it down, but reacting to it emotionally. Because for her, those jokes aren't just jokes, they're dismissals. They're ways of shutting down something that matters to her, something that connects to how she sees the world. Moves between them, softening the edges as she always does, adding small, gentle comments that try to keep the peace. And there's something almost beautiful about the way she does it, not by forcing agreement, but by reminding everyone in her own quiet way that there's still kindness in the room. But kindness doesn't stop the underlying tension. It just changes its shape. And as the episode continues, the humor starts to feel different, less like something shared and more like something defensive, like a shield being raised again and again. Each time the conversation gets a little too close to something uncomfortable. What's interesting is that Archie doesn't seem fully aware of it. He's not consciously deciding to avoid the topic. He's reacting instinctively, using the tools he's always used, the same patterns of speech, the same rhythms of humor, because they've worked before, they've kept him in control. They've allowed him to navigate conversations without having to question himself. But this time, it doesn't work the same way. Because Mike keeps talking. Because Gloria keeps reacting. Because the world, even inside that small living room, doesn't stay fixed. And that's where the brilliance of the show really comes through, because it doesn't rely on a single big moment to reveal this. It lets it unfold slowly, naturally, through repetition, through small shifts in tone, through the way each joke lands a little differently than the last. You start to notice the pauses, the moments where the laughter fades a little quicker, where the silence lingers just a bit longer, where the humor doesn't quite cover what it's supposed to. And in those pauses, you can feel what's underneath. A fear, maybe. Uncertainty. A sense that something is changing, and there's no clear way to stop it. The social context of the time sits quietly in the background of all this, not as something explained directly, but as something you can feel in the conversation, in the topics being touched on, in the generational divide between Archie and Mike, in the way Gloria navigates both sides, in the way tries to hold everything together. This was a time when television wasn't supposed to feel like this, when sitcoms were expected to resolve things neatly, to deliver clear jokes and clean endings. And here was a show that allowed discomfort to exist, that allowed conversations to feel unfinished, that allowed characters to be wrong without immediately correcting them. And that's part of why the humor feels so different, because it's not there to replace the tension. It's there to sit alongside it, to highlight it, to expose it. There's a moment in the episode where Archie makes a joke that would normally get a big reaction, the kind that would dominate the room. But this time, the response is quieter, more hesitant, and you can almost feel him noticing that, even if he doesn't fully understand why. So he doubles down. Another joke. Then another. Each one trying to recapture that sense of control, that sense of being the center of attention, and each one revealing a little more of what's driving him. Because humor, in this case, isn't just about making people laugh. It's about maintaining a position, about holding onto a role that feels like it's slipping. Mike's responses stay measured, consistent, almost patient, and that patience becomes its own kind of pressure, because it doesn't give Archie anything to push against. It doesn't escalate into a full argument. It just keeps the conversation grounded, keeps it moving forward. Gloria's reactions become more emotional, more direct, and that contrast between her openness and Archie's defensiveness creates a different kind of tension, one that feels more personal, less about abstract ideas and more about how those ideas affect relationships. In the middle of it all, continues to offer those small moments of warmth, those brief interruptions that remind everyone that they're still connected, that this isn't just a debate, it's a family. And that's what makes the discomfort so powerful, because it's not happening between strangers, It's happening between people who care about each other, people who have to live with each other after the conversation ends. As the episode moves toward its conclusion, there's no big resolution, no moment where Archie suddenly understands everything, no clear victory for any side. Instead, there's a kind of quiet settling, a slowing down of the conversation as the energy begins to fade. The jokes become less frequent. The responses become shorter. The room feels different, not resolved but changed. And in that change, you can see the impact of everything that's been said, everything that's been avoided, everything that's been revealed without being acknowledged. Watching it now, it feels almost more relevant than it probably did at the time, because the idea of using humor as a shield, as a way to avoid uncomfortable truths, is something that hasn't gone away. It's something that shows up in all kinds of conversations, in all kinds of contexts. What the show does so well is it doesn't judge that behavior outright. It doesn't turn Archie into a simple villain. It lets you see the humanity in it, the vulnerability underneath it, even as it challenges the ideas he's expressing. And that balance is what makes it work, what makes it feel honest, what makes it feel like more than just a sitcom. It's a conversation. A long, messy, sometimes uncomfortable conversation that doesn't end neatly, that doesn't tie everything together, that just stops, the way real conversations often do. And when it stops, you're left thinking, not just about what was said, but about why it was said, about what was hidden inside those jokes, about what it means to laugh at something that isn't entirely funny. That's the kind of comedy that stays with you. Not because it gives you answers, but because it makes you sit with the questions a little longer.